If there's one news that is buzzing all around the world, then it's vaccines and how are we going to get them. So, before delving deeper into the subject matter, that is the economics of vaccine, let's have a quick look at what are we going to talk about in today's video. First, we take a very quick look at what are the major players in Indian context that we are going to see in upcoming days with their own vaccines. And then, before delving deeper into the finances of this vaccine in India, we take a very quick look at this demand and supply gap in this process of vaccination in India. And at the end, we take a very interesting case study of how investors doubled their money in a very short span of 2 months or so because of this news of vaccines in India. So let's start. As you will see on the screen, there are 6 major contestants in this vaccine race in India. And those in the news as of now are 2. First is the Serum Institute in collaboration with AstraZeneca and Oxford vaccine. That is the first one, AZD1222. And the second is Bharat Biotech's Covaxin. Both of these vaccines need temperatures in the range of 2 degrees Celsius to 8 degrees Celsius, something which is found in the domestic refrigerators and freezers, whereas those of other vaccines in world like Pfizer and Moderna need temperatures from minus 60 degrees Celsius to minus 90 degrees Celsius, and something that the Indian cold storage facilities do not support. So thus we are not going to delve deeper into those vaccines and be confined to the news that we have been hearing as of now from the Drug Controller General of India. So, what's the demand and supply gap that I was talking about? As we all might think that the production capacity in India might not be sufficient enough to vaccinate 130 crore Indians, the story is quite different. In the first phase, India plans to vaccinate the highest risk population, that is the 300 million people who are healthcare workers as well as the frontline workers and those above 50 years of age and with comorbidities. Comorbidities basically mean that those people who have more than one disease are vulnerable to COVID-19 even more than the general population. As per estimates by Jeffries, India will take a year to complete this vaccination of the high risk 22% of the population. Whereas, in contrast, the interesting fact that I was talking about is that India will have vaccine doses to cover more than 80% of the population as per the capacity of the various vaccine producers that we saw in the earlier table with their capacities to produce vaccines. So now the primary question that lies over our head is, are we really going to get vaccine free of cost? Or is the government really going to sponsor these vaccines as raised in various sort of comments by leading government officials? Let's have a quick look at what the story is. At the discounted rate of rupees 220 per dose, as promised by the Serum Institute to Indian government, the cost of vaccinating 130 crore Indian stands at amount of 57,200 crores. And mind you, this cost doesn't include the infrastructure and logistics costs, which will also run into thousands of crore rupees. To put this in a perspective, India's total budget for the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in financial year 21 stood at rupees 67,111 crore. And in financial year 20, the center utilized rupees 64,609 crore rupees out of this budget allocated to the ministry. And the cost that we are looking just to vaccinate all Indians stands at 57,000 crore rupees. And that's not just the end. Like, India doesn't only have COVID-19 patients. India has a lot of other diseases and lot of other issues that needs to be tackled into this umbrella of healthcare and family planning. So, how does this vaccine process get funded? Is it just the government of India who funds this process, or are there some international players too? Interestingly, yes. World Bank has approved over 7,300 crore rupees to Indian government to use it for any aspect of the vaccination program. The Global Alliance for Vaccination and Immunization is an international sort of response to the most underdeveloped and developing countries to enable them to take them out of this coronavirus pandemic, which would otherwise be very difficult in comparison to the developed countries who have the potential in terms of infrastructure, money, and other facilities. So, as per a report by the Global Alliance of Vaccination and Immunization report, and which was assessed by the global news agency, that is Reuters, says that if India gets 190 to 250 million shots subsidized under COVAX is this program of providing fund to the underdeveloped and developing countries, India will still need $1.4 billion, that is around 10,200 crore rupees, to fund just the first phase of the program. Whereas if India gets a lower allocation of 95 to 125 million doses subsidized by the COVAX program, it will have to bear an additional cost of rupees 14,000 crore rupees, again just for the first phase of the program. Back in September, Poonawalla had tweeted, and I quote, "Rupees 80,000 crore over the next year would be required to buy and distribute COVID-19 vaccines to everyone in India. And this is going to be the next challenge that the country needs to tackle too." Stop quote. Center has disagreed with the estimate and assured that it has enough funds for the COVID-19 vaccine. But we all are aware about how and what the fiscal scenario of the Indian government looks like as of now. As we talked about in our last video, how Indian government has given more than 30 lakh crore rupees under the stimulus package that we looked about, plus a lot of fiscal stimulus has also been passed in terms of infrastructural development under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. The fiscal space of 57,200 crore rupees is a little bit far-fetched that the government could afford. When we talk about all of these humongous costs, a very important thing that comes in our mind is how the government is going to save money in this mega COVID vaccination program in India. Even, that is, Electronic Vaccination Intelligence Network is an initiative launched by the government of India in an indigenous program. This is basically a sort of supply chain management software development wherein it helps a lot to reduce costs in this behemoth vaccine programs that we talked about earlier. In this table that you will see on the screen, savings of almost 29.6% was done in total in a lot of vaccination programs pre and in comparison to pre-even and post-even. So one very important question that comes to our mind at this point of time is, how does even help in saving money? So there are a few things that even does. First, it helps to keep the stock update at the lowest of the centers, and those centers which send them in a very efficient manner, and which helps the process move very smoothly instead of having stock outs, which was very common as seen in the pre-even period across India. Second, mean number of days to vaccine expiry reduced from 428 in pre-even period to 384 in post-even period. So, as we talked about that there are a lot of constraints in terms of the government running this program entirely one-handedly by only the government budget sources. So what are the other sources that we looked about? We talked about the international sources, international funding from World Bank as well as the GAVI, that is Gavi reports that we talked earlier. Another big source of funding also comes from India Incorporation. Basically, a lot of corporate firms have been trying to lobby in a report by FICCI and EY that companies want the government to allow them to use their CSR, that is corporate social responsibility funds, to vaccinate their employees. And if we assess this claim by this report, then it basically turns out to be a win-win situation for both the government as well as the companies, because governments would basically require lesser funds to fund this vaccine run, as well as the companies would also take it upon themselves to vaccinate not only more employees but also more people across the country. Support this claim, we see a lot of tweets also coming up from major industrialists in India. Anand Mahindra talks about how the top percentile income people should not only paying for the vaccines that they take, but also start keeping out funds to subsidize vaccines to other lowest of the status, as we see in a similar sort of case in the LPG cylinder subsidy giving up schemes. And at last, as I talked, that we are going to look at a very interesting case study. So we all are very aware of this fact and this news that the healthcare sector, the healthcare industry has boomed a lot because of this coronavirus pandemic, and the stock prices have surged like anything in across this industry. But as we talked about, and as we saw, this process of vaccination is not only say medical industry making vaccines, but also this entire process of vaccine reaching from the medical industry to the lowest of the strata through a lot of logistics companies as well. So that's the beauty of stock market. Snowman Logistics was one of those examples that I am referring here. Snowman Logistics as of 10th November 2020 was trading somewhere around 36 rupees. But as soon as the news of vaccine started ramping up, which was not so much in earlier days, while it was say in the clinical trial process, the stock prices surged from 36 rupees to almost 70 rupees. And that's how investors doubled their money by taking a very wise and a safe call through stock market bets. That was the economics of vaccination, this mega vaccine run in India. Thank you very much for listening.